how do we help horses thrive? We tackle problems using science. Plus, our love of horses keeps us working until we get it right. Even with our most established feeds, we keep innovating. Even when it takes years of research, there is always more to learn. Our PhDs are dedicated to the scientific method, but it can't capture the feeling of seeing a horse reach their full potential. It takes science and love, each pulling its weight, to help your horse live their best life.
Excellent. Okay. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that we are going to record this. So Emily and I both have mics on, and hopefully as we do the panel, we'll be passing out the mic over there as well. So we have only 2 hours to cram a whole ton of really good information, and so I'm going to try to go through as quickly as I can. To save time, what we did do is have our exec meeting virtually this year, but I promise we will be, oh, thank you, Em. I promise we will be having an in-person exec meeting next year. Also, to save time, what we did was on your tables, you'll see a pamphlet, and that's going to have all of our speakers' bios today, as well as information about each of their respective organizations. So as we're going through today, feel free to take the time to look through those, familiarize yourself with our speakers, and if you have any questions at the end, we will do a Q&A. So first and foremost, I wanted to go into a little bit about what we've been doing for UHC in 2022. Obviously, the highlight for us and our pride and joy is the UHC Equine Resource Database. We call it UHC ERD, or UCERD for short. And it's actually come a long way since 2019. So I remember 3 years ago speaking to you about this concept we had in our head about this searchable online database. And to see where it is today is just, it's really amazing to me. So to give a quick overview for those of you who are not familiar with the UCERD and what we've been working on there. It is a free online searchable database of over 1,200 rescues and sanctuaries nationally that we've identified that help to care for at-risk horses and those that are in transition. Included in this database are also things like assistance programs, safety net resources. So you've got hay banks in there, feed banks, castration services. We've got euthanasia and disposal, options and things like that. So if an owner comes to the site and they need help finding one of those resources, we will point them in the right direction. This database, we feel it's so vital to the industry because we believe very strongly that the most impact that we can have for these at-risk horses is to start at the source of the problem, and that's with the owners. So if we can help the owners find responsible options and resources to help them, hopefully we can prevent these horses from becoming at risk or put in a situation where they become at risk in the first place. Just make sure I touched on all the points I wanted to touch on with this. So this year, we're actually going to be focusing on doing some marketing for the UHC database, because if nobody knows about this database, we really can't help anybody. So we're also relying on our industry partners and everybody in this room to really get the word out about the UHC Equine Resource Database and let your members, your friends and family, everybody know that this exists and they can go here if they need help. Make sure I'm on the right. Okay, this is just a quick example of the results. So when an owner comes to the site and they say they click in that they want a hay and feed resource, so they'll put in hay and feed as their selection, whatever state they reside in, and the database will populate with these results. They can also search for things like if they want a breed-specific rescue or sanctuary, they can search for things like Thoroughbred, they can search for Standardbred, and we'll populate the results with those types of facilities. We also have affiliations. So if an owner is looking for a facility that is accredited with GFAS or STA or TAA, they can find that through this site as well. Same thing with partnerships. So if they would like to find a facility that is partnered with the ASPCA, TCA, anything like that, they can find it through the database. And the reason that I wanted to show you this slide is because we are actually going to be getting a significant upgrade for the database this year. So after we're finished with this conference, Emily and I are going to be jumping into onboarding with a software. It's actually an association management software called MemberClicks. So right now we're using a CRM called Insightly, and unfortunately we have outgrown that for various reasons. So we felt it was time for us to have an upgrade for the database. This is just an example of what it could look like. There's a lot of play there for us, so we can sort of dictate what we want to show on the interface on the front end for owners and what we want them to see as far as the organizations. The nice thing about this software is that users or organizations that are putting information into our database can actually create a member profile, so they can go in on their end, update their address, update their phone number, and that takes a little bit of the work off of me, so I'm not constantly changing that, and saves a lot of hours on my end. The other nice thing about this software is that it allows us to do a lot more integration. It allows us to do a lot more automation, which is, again, going to free up a lot of my hours to do things that are a little bit more important than that. So we're excited. This if the onboarding goes well, this should go live in August. Fingers crossed for us. The next thing that we were excited about, this actually was a presentation that Emily and I had given at Equine Affair last year in November 2021. And what we wanted to do was to create a presentation that is directed at owners. And we originally gave this at Equine Affair, but we also gave it during the National Animal Control Association's board meeting 2 months ago. And it was very popular, so we felt that, well, we'll take it a step further, and we actually created a recording of this presentation. So we wanted to put it up on our website, share it on our social media, make sure that everybody knew about it. And the importance behind this presentation was to try and get horse owners thinking about what happens to your horse if something were to happen to you. So if you lost your job today, if if something, God forbid, happened to your health, what's going to happen to your horse? And one of the things that we wanted to get owners thinking about is setting their horse up for success through making sure that their horse has basic training, that their veterinary needs are being met, that they've thought about responsible options for their horse if they can no longer keep them. One of the topics we talk about as well in this presentation is estate planning. So we actually go into pretty good detail about estate planning. And the great thing about this is that for Emily and I, one of the big impacts for us is that we actually were able to weave into the data coming out of the Equine Welfare Data Collective Report into this presentation. And it sort of gave owners an idea of why these horses are ending up at risk according to the data that we've collected. And just to give you some perspective on the importance of this recording, in our latest EWDC report, 77% of equines entering the custody of EWDC participants, so these are people that have completed the EWDC survey, came from a combination of both owner surrenders and law enforcement confiscations, with owner finances being the number one reason why these horses are ending up in rescues and shelters, according to the data that we have from EWDC, and owner health being the second highest reason. So clearly, starting at the source is so important for us, and that again is the owners. It was the first time, again, that Emily and I were able to weave this data into that story and make it relatable to horse owners. But also, it was sort of a culmination of why we're doing what we're doing at UHC and why it's so important to the industry. So starting upstream of why these horses are ending up at risk and in rescues. And the source starts with owners and helping them to be responsible for the horses in their care. I just want to also mention this recording is available on our website, and if any of your organizations would like us to present it, we're more than happy to do so. The last thing I want to touch upon is UHC, we're still running our Microchip Giveaway. These chips are free, so the only thing that people need to do is go to the website, fill out the form, and we will mail them chips. It's 2 chips per owner and 5 chips per rescue and sanctuary. We still have plenty of supply, so please share the heck out of this with your members. The other thing that we are doing right now is a benefit raffle. You will see information about this raffle on your tables. So I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we have not sold a lot of tickets, so your chances of winning are pretty high. So definitely support a great cause. Sign up for the raffle. We'd very much appreciate it.
It's been donated by White Stallion.
Yes.
So we would love to show White Stallion that the industry supports it.
Yes.
Where is White Stallion?
Arizona.
Out by Tucson, I think. I have to look at it.
Ashley, do you have tickets available here, or you have to buy them online?
Buy them online, and we can.
Yep.
If anybody doesn't want to do it on their phone, we're at the ready to help you.
Yes, I will put your information in the computer for you. Also, I think it goes without saying, if you are part of an organization that is not already supporting the UHC, please jump on board with us. We could definitely use the support. As Julie mentioned, we're run by a staff of 1 on a shoestring budget, and we accomplish so much for the industry, so please support us. With that, let me check on the timing here. I think, I'm doing good. Okay. I'm going to introduce Carly Barrick, who is a part of A Home for Every Horse, and we are partnered with them with the Equine Network on this project. So I am going to try to squish myself in the corner.
I'm going to get out of the way.
Nope, you're fine.
This will just move your slide. You've got the mic okay?
Yep,
All right.
I think. Perfect. And I know we're pressed for time, so I can make this super, super fast. But us over at A Home for Every Horse, short and sweet, we are a rescue resource brand. So we're connecting people like or organizations like UHC with rescues in need, and we couldn't do it without the UHC. So thank you. That's basically what we are here to say. So just bridging the gap, essentially. You can go to the next slide. So we have been an organization for 10 years. So last year, just at a glance, we contributed more than 12,000 feed coupons to rescues, more than 300 horses were blanketed, and just over 1,000 horses adopted from our Home for Every Horse organizations. And that's about our average on a yearly rate. And new this year, we know COVID was really tough, so we're doing 10 in-person visits to rescues to volunteer and give back and kind of just spread the awareness of what us and the UHC do together, and also just adding some giveaways. So that's kind of where our marketing comes in, just trying to, really spread awareness across the industry in new and unique, fun ways. Next. So here's just our over the past 10 years numbers. So in December, we just hit our 10,000 horses adopted mark, over 1,500 tons of feed donated, and over 1,200 blankets donated. So just really, really cool things we're doing, and we couldn't do it without the UHC. And also just connecting these rescues with resources that the UHC offers is super, super valuable. So, this partnership, we could not do it without you guys, and that's basically what we would like to get across. So, next slide. And we'll just finish this up just with one of our most recent donations that we did, and it's just a little testimonial you guys can read, but essentially she's just saying, we couldn't do, we wouldn't have these connections without A Home for Every Horse, and we wouldn't be able to do it without UHC. So that's short and sweet version, and I just wanted to say thank you and just give you a shout out, and we're happy to be here. So
it's just to add to that, it's really, I know I don't have the mic on, it's really great to see, we get Julie and I know Dave and and Purina gets these wonderful testimonials from the rescues about what they use the coupons on. So some of them use it directly to help the owners that are in need with the feed. Some of it use it for the rescue horses. So it's just such a great partnership, and to see the direct effect it has on the rescues is just heartwarming to get these replies from them. So keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. I won't slow us down anymore.
Steal your mic back. And we're going to hand it over to Emily Stearns, my partner in crime. Make sure my mic is still working.
Ashley and I joke that we are a team pair at this point, because there's no point in talking about the data unless we talk about how it's affecting and helping horse owners and how it's being applied. So what's new, just kind of a brief rundown of what's new. We did publish a 4th report in February. All of our reports can be seen on the website, and I'll show you a little screen cap of that in a second. There is, if anybody just wants to see what the reports look like, a printed copy out by the registration desk. And then I think we have the one-pagers out there too. We did a little one-page infographic as well, just some basics, and it shows you where you can go find some of the rest of the data. We've been working with the UHC, like Ashley said, on some new CRM, and it's one of those things where it sounds like a convenience thing, but for us, we are actually pulling data out of that as well. That's how we kind of figure out how many rescues there are, how many sanctuaries there are, where they're located. We do stuff like compare it to, regional density population. In report 3, we talked about regional economic impact and things like that, and kind of show comparative. The density of rescues compared to regional need in terms of financial issues. We also have been working on educational opportunities, like Ashley said, and I'm going to focus on that a little bit. And we've been doing a lot of collaboration, and I'm stumping this because we want to be doing more collaboration. So if you're out there and you're thinking this data is really important and you want help talking about it and you want us to help talk about it, we are more than happy to. Like Ashley, like the USC, it's just me. So if you email us, you're going to get me, and I'm happy to talk to you about it. I'm happy to talk on the phone about it. Ashley and I don't really get tired of talking about our program, so you might have to cut us off at a certain point. But it is something we are really passionate about and that we feel is really, really important. We're also working on data visualization. So as you start to see some of the infographics we're doing and the reporting process, we're going to start getting involved in a little bit of more sophisticated data visualization software. We also have an internship program where we get interns interested in data analysis come on and help kind of come up with creative ways to help visualize the data as well. All this is kind of part of our evolving strategic plan. So again, we're working on collaboration. We're working on expanding these educational opportunities and outreach. The data doesn't matter if nobody knows it exists. And helping people understand what it all means. And this is kind of what Ashley and I have been talking about with the presentations and our webinar recordings is someone coming from college like myself who hated statistics and thought it was really stupid and boring, and I'd much rather be in the barn petting the ponies. Yes, agree. I never wanted anything to do with statistics in my entire life, and then here we are. So it is really important, and it's really important that we make it palatable for horse people like us who, again, would rather be petting the literal pony I have in my backyard. So talking about helping people understand what it all means, and this talks about increasing participation and communication and all that stuff, but it's really focused on discussing, oh, Ashley, what have I done?
You know what it was? It's just the title thing. Do you need to come back?
I got it. All about discussing the data with impact and asking ourselves, great, so if we tell you 77% of horses are coming from owner surrenders and law enforcement confiscation, why does that matter? We did a webinar recently, kind of comparative to small animal statistics. So this is why it matters, because programs, really impactful programs in the small animal world have focused on spay and neuter. Small animals, dogs, cats, companion animals, 50% of those animals are coming in as strays when you look at data from PetPoint and the ASPCA and Best Friends. So spay and neuter programs are really impactful when 50% of animals are coming in from kind of feral breeding off the street and stray breeding off the street. But if we have 77% of horses coming directly from owners, that's not a stray animal problem. That's not a problem spay-neuter is going to solve. So how do we solve that problem, and how do we prevent the horses from needing to come into shelters? Through responsible ownership. So if we know owner finances are the #1 reported issue, gee whiz, maybe throwing hay assistance and feed assistance and medical assistance are going to help prevent horses from needing to come into the shelter. So these talks, that's Ashley and us at Equine Affair in November. We're planning, I think, on, we have Right Horse Summit in September in Denver. I didn't just imagine that, right? We have Equine Affair in Ohio. This will be our first trip out to Equine Affair in Ohio next year. We have Equine Affair in November, again, in Springfield. So again, getting the information out there. We've been kind of waxing poetic about this talk we gave at Equine Affair. It was well attended. You know, we had a tough slot, 10 a.m. Sunday morning, again, Friday morning.
Even worse.
I guess like that turned into a 4-day whirlwind. It's really the first time we've been able to talk about the data in kind of a conversational manner, and people were extremely excited about it, which is, you know, you never really anticipate people being excited about numbers and math. But it really kind of had meaning to them and is starting to make sense. So this is the direction we're heading as we continue to collect and report and getting these conversations going. And I mentioned that small animal comparative stat webinar. So we recorded that. It's called Love to the Rescue. All of our recorded webinars and stats are listed on the United Horse Coalition website. So if you go to the website under recordings and webinars, they are all there. And then if you want to see any of the reports, if you go to the United Horse Coalition website and go to the subsection, the Equine Welfare Data Collective, you can click and see all the reports. We are currently working on kind of a 5-page summary to have like a PDF handout that's going to take, at this point we have almost 350 pages of reports and data, so we're going to try to condense that down into, you know, a nice candy bar snack size of data and reporting, something that's shareable and easy to hand out. So look forward to that. Definitely reach out if you are interested in, I mean, many of our panelists today, so ASPCA and GFAS both require their participants to participate in the Equine Welfare Data Collective. So that is a really great way for us to get participants and get data, and we're just always looking for ways to expand our reach and expand participant encouragement. Good.
Excellent.
Yeah. And I think I stayed in the time.
We're doing
okay,
so
yeah.
good. I'm excited. Okay. All right, so now we're going to move into our panel discussion of things, which I am just so excited about, and I wanted to thank you guys for all being willing to, I was going to ask, did you get the mic? Because that's important too. So the reason why I wanted to bring these wonderful organizations together was I've started looking to the analytics behind our webpage and what owners are looking for most, or organizations that come to our page are looking for, looking at the most, and that's our database and also our resources for rescues. Sometimes one is higher than the other, but lately it's been resources for rescues is really jumping up there. So for me, I wanted to take that a step further and invite these organizations that offer accreditation and also partnerships with these rescues and sanctuaries, because if we can give these rescues and sanctuaries a pathway forward to improving themselves and elevating themselves, that's really just going to elevate our industry as a whole, right? Because we're all connected in one way or another. So by elevating the rescues and sanctuaries, we're really helping everybody. So that's the title of our panel discussion today. Accreditation and partnerships are professionalizing the field. What it can do for you, the equine community, and the horses that you're helping. So, you know, for UHC, oftentimes we sort of act as this central hub for not only the owners to come for resources, but again, the rescues and sanctuaries. And oftentimes what we're doing on that resources for rescues site is to direct them off onto these types of organizations. So having everyone together today to talk about some of the things that they're offering, some of the ways that they can help these rescues and sanctuaries, I felt was just very important for us. So with that, like I said, I just want to remind everybody that we do have the speaker bios and information about each of their respective organizations in those pamphlets. So if you want to find out more about who's speaking today, definitely take a look at that. There was no way for us to get the 1,200 rescues and sanctuaries, obviously, here into a UHC meeting. That would just be impossible, both financially and space-wise. So what we wanted to do was actually go ahead and record this panel today to make sure that we can get this important information out to everybody. So our plan is to, when we get back from this conference, clean up the recording. I will go ahead and add in any information that our panelists would like to add in addition to what we go over today. We'll add that into the recording, and we will clean it up, make it look pretty, and send that out to the rescues and sanctuaries, and hopefully get them interested in a path forward to improving themselves. With that, let's see if I can go here. I am going to go ahead and give each of our panelists 1 minute to introduce themselves and whatever they'd like to say about their organizations. And we have 2 mics. I've got one. You guys have one. Are you comfortable just going? We'll just go left, and then when we answer the questions, go right, and we'll just go back and forth. Does that work? Do you have it currently? You can just hold it up. That's fine. Yeah. You don't have to like clip it or anything. It picks up pretty good sound.
I'm timing for 1 minute.
Oh, yes. Emily's going to be timing everything. We have a little bit of extra time, so it's okay.
I'm going to jump in when you hit a minute.
Okay, perfect. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you guys.
All right. I'm Jennifer Daniels. I'm with the Standardbred Transition Alliance. Our mission is to inspect, accredit, and award grant money to organizations that are taking standardbreds, rehabbing, rehabilitating, rehoming standardbreds. So quite simply, we offer annual accreditation and grant awards to those aftercare, the accredited aftercare organizations that are providing these rehoming services for standardbreds.
Thank you. I am not Dr. Emily Weiss. She has a lot of things I don't have. Chief among them would be a full head of hair and a Ph.D., and I'm probably not going to get either one of those. So, but I'm Tom Persechino. I'm the program director for ASPCA here, representing the Right Horse this morning, which is our adoption collaborative, where we work with rescue and rehoming facilities as well as industry partners across the nation. It's about partnerships, not accreditation, but bringing them together to massively increase adoptions of horses. So,
I need more than a minute. I'm Daryl Tropea, the program director, Equine for the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries, and we are just that. We are global. We certify internationally animal sanctuaries that meet our animal care standards, as well as management and governance best practices. I think it's important to start to just share that we define sanctuary as a facility that provides a safe haven or refuge for at-risk or in-need animals. So we accredit all sorts of sheltering opportunities, such as transitioning centers, equine-assisted therapy centers, rescues, adoption centers. And although we accredit facilities for 23 different species of animals, including primates and tigers and bears, 65% of all our accredited facilities worldwide are equine. Thank you. Little fluffy thing now. Is it a minute? I could have gone on. Good job.
Good morning. My name's Erin, Halliwell. I'm the Executive Director of Thoroughbred Charities of America, and we are a grant-making organization based in Lexington, Kentucky, but our grant recipients are across the country, and actually usually a couple in Canada. We provide funding to organizations, approved organizations, working to rehab, retrain, and rehome thoroughbreds. That's where the majority of our funding goes, but we also dedicate some funding to the human side of the thoroughbred racing industry. So we provide some grants to organizations working to provide health and human services to those on the backstretch and on the farms.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kristin Werner. I am senior counsel for the Jockey Club, but I'm here today in my capacity as accreditation chair for the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. The TAA was formed 10 years ago. Probably sounds very similar to what STA is, but we accredit, inspect, and award grants to thoroughbred organizations in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Williams, and I am representing the Equus Foundation today. My background is very eclectic to start out with, and that's one of the reasons why one of my primary goals, one of my primary responsibilities right now is with the Guardian program, which is one of the programs that Equus operates. Equus has its tentacles, I guess, in a wide variety of areas. The Guardian program and the Equine Welfare Network deals with both rescue, sanctuaries, and therapeutic riding centers. And it deals primarily with the horses and how the horses are taken care of during the time at those facilities and what happens to them afterwards for the rest of their lives in there. The Equus Foundation also has other very specific things to help those partner organizations to share information about horses that are in need to go to someplace else, and for organizations that need to acquire horses, they can do that. And a third component of what they do is they have a very strong educational thing, and that was one of my early entrees into Equus, is that founded the Equine Education Network, which is about colleges and universities all across the country, and trying to tie all that together because that's something that's very, very important.
Excellent. Okay. We're still doing really good on time, so everyone can breathe a little bit. We're okay.
I will say, panelists, there's a giant vent back here, so for the people in the back, you might need to project a little louder.
Okay. A little louder. All right, got it. Okay. So for the first question, before we jump into this, I just want to explain how we came up with these questions. So we actually sent out a survey to our UHC members to sort of get some feedback on what they'd like to hear from our panelists today. And this first question was actually ranked the second most important question to them. We're going to try to limit the answers to about 3 minutes, but there is a little bit of excess time, so if you feel like you need to go over, that is okay, just so we can make sure we're allowing some time for discussion. And at the end of this panel, we will plan to also have a Q&A, a time set aside for Q&A. There is a possibility that it might run a little bit over into lunch. We're not obligating anybody to stay. We're certainly not obligating the panelists to stay, so we'll just see how this goes. So we'll start with our first question, and that is, why do you feel it's important for rescues and sanctuaries to become accredited? What is the incentive? So this sort of plays into the title of our panel today, and that's what accreditation and partnerships do for the organizations that they help, the equine community as a whole, and the horses that are actually being helped by these organizations. So whoever has the mic, you're first.
I was liking that it started at that.
I mean, I can run it back and forth, but.
The Equus Foundation is kind of a combination of between grant awarding and moving into the certification and accreditation. We don't call it necessarily that, but there's several different phases that we have our partner organizations go through. They have to go through a process of applying to get into the Equine Welfare Network, and then apply to get in the Guardian status, and this year we added a new component of what we call the mentor status, which is going to be kind of the accreditation part. Our focus is primarily, and has been in the past, is on transparency. So it's not about us making a determination of whether somebody is doing something correctly or incorrectly. It's more about making sure that the public, because they are, as 501c3s, are public organizations and not individual privately run groups that many of them actually are, and they don't really realize that they are. So what this does is gets them to take some of their information and put it out, and we check and ask and double check and go through vet responses and things that they say and what they've done, check their census, check where their horses and equines are going, all of those things to make it so that it's very apparent and that is public on the website. So anybody can look at the website, their website, or on their component on our website to turn around and see what they're able to do and how they're doing it in there. And one of the things that is an added benefit to doing this is that you have to be a guardian in order to receive any financial assistance. So there are some incentives for them to do that. We allow them to keep all the data. They have to update certain things every year. So, and that's what we're actually in the process of doing that right now. And that's one of my primary responsibilities is to do that. And then for us to determine in terms of what information they need to change to keep that transparency. The thing that we started this year with the Guardian program also is to start to have some basic requirements in relationship to some of the things that they are doing. They have to have certain characteristics of quarantine and biosecurity for the horses when they're there. They have to have some ability for financial stability. They have to have some, what are they doing with their equines after they are time to move on to a different place. And one of our primary things that's a little bit different than what a lot of other people are doing is that we are basically enforcing that they have to think about it from a context of what the equine is going to happen to them for the rest of their life, not just that first transition. So it's an important thing for them to know what are their policies and procedures and how that impacts in terms of what is going to happen with the lives of the horse. One auxiliary benefit to this is that because we work with all of these organizations in some fashion or another, because we're not restricted to any particular type or breed of horse or facility or any of those kinds of things. But one of the things that also helps on that whole accreditation and certification side is it gets them to actually start and think about it acting like a business, as opposed to only, it could be because everybody that wants to do it wants to save horses. But that doesn't mean that they have a good business model to make it so they're going to be sustainable more than 1 or 2 years. And so one of the things that we can do with our accreditation, with that partnership, with all of that information, is to help provide other resources for them so they can see how some of the organizations do it. And we don't look at it as a one-size-fits-all, because somebody who's rescuing 6 or 7 horses or sanctuary for 6 or 7, and somebody that has a $40 million budget can't be evaluated the same way, but their general principles can, and that's how we kind of take that and figure out how that's going to happen.
I like that. The biosecurity and that business model. I like those.
So I think for probably everything that we all say up here, we're all going to say ditto, because I think accreditation is important. So I echo everything. Transparency is huge. Generally, accreditation is a mechanism to ensure that, in our case, Thoroughbred aftercare organizations are legitimate, and we can then hold them accountable for those that are caring for thoroughbreds as they transition out of their first career. Just quickly to kind of give you an idea about what TAA accreditation involves, there's a very lengthy accreditation application that includes a lot of documents that have to be uploaded. Essentially, the accreditation application is to ensure that the organizations are meeting the code of standards of the TAA. After an organization goes through the application process, if they are then passed on, the next step is inspection. And we site inspect every single facility that houses horses for the organization on an annual basis. We do re-inspections in an off year, and then the second year again, then they have to completely fill out the application again and reapply. So we have eyes on the horses in addition to all of their documents and websites and Facebook pages and things like that. And it really is an all-encompassing analysis of the organization. And we'll get into a little bit on the question, I think that's next, about how organizations can improve their applications, because I think we'll talk a little bit about putting your best foot forward, and sometimes it's a little bit tough, I think, for people to talk about what they do because they're doing it on a daily basis, and it's just well, that's what we do. And so that's really important. The Code of Standards covers operations, education, horse healthcare management, facility standards, and adoption policies and protocols. Specifically to the why I think it's important, I did want to just focus on, for our organizations, the unique need of thoroughbreds coming off of the racetrack. Thoroughbreds are, as most of you guys probably know, often retired from their first career at about the same age that horses are starting their first career, and so they've just got a lot of different things that they're not used to. Cross ties, very foreign. Loud noises, maybe not quite as scary, but they do need people that are qualified and know how to care for thoroughbreds to ensure that successful transition to a second career. So the accreditation process involves ensuring that aftercare organizations that are supported by the racing industry through the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance meet that set of standards and are able to provide that sort of specialized aftercare for thoroughbreds. That way, the owners who support the TAA and the owners who are retiring their horses can rely on our assessment of their organizations to ensure that those horses are going to have their best chance upon retirement. Speaking specifically to the horses, one of the things that I think is important about the TAA is that we do require organizations to have follow-up in their accreditation, in their adoption process. So horses are ensured that if the first home that they go to after they're adopted doesn't work out, that the organization will take the horse back and try to replace it. So obviously that's only as good as the person who takes the horse calling the organization and doing so. But we do have several organizations that are able, have had to take horses back after several years. You know, things happen. Divorces happen, jobs are lost, things that happen that people who really want to keep their horse can't. So the organization being a safety net to be able to bring that back is really important. And so for the horses, that's probably one of the biggest things. And then as far as other incentives, and I think we're all going to say this as well, organizations that are TAA accredited are then eligible for grants from the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. And since 2012, we've awarded more than $25 million to accredited organizations, and those grants are specifically earmarked for equine care, so the horses specifically.
Okay, well, Thoroughbred Charities of America is, we're not an accrediting body, so we are a grant maker. We approve charities for a grant each year, much like Equus. And many of the things, the criteria we evaluate in our application, Kristin and Tim have touched on, so I won't be redundant there. But it's an all-encompassing look at each charity. You know, we have to make those evaluations. But to the first part of that question, I think it's important because it provides a seal of approval, whether it's from TCA, TAA, Equus, GFAS, any of the organizations represented up here. That seal of approval is really important for these organizations, not only for legitimacy, but for other funders to look at an organization and say, oh, look, they have all of these seals of approval. You know, they're really doing a great job. And that's actually why, just a little bit of history here, why TCA was founded back in 1990. Our founders really appreciated that sort of aspect of the one-stop shop, where they could, let's say a breeding farm could make a donation to TCA in the thoroughbred industry, and then any other subsequent charities that went to the breeding farm asking for a donation, the breeding farm could then say, well, go to TCA, we give to TCA, TCA vets the charity. So that's kind of the genesis of how that sort of seal of approval really came to be. And I think, over the years, it's just expanded, to many of the organizations here. And then, of course, to the incentive part of that question, for us, the most tangible incentive is financial. If organizations that apply for a grant successfully complete our grant application process, are approved for a grant, they're going to receive a grant check in the mail from us at the end of the year. And again, that the sort of intangible part, that seal of approval, I think can also be an incentive for organizations out there, because when they do complete our application process and successfully receive a grant, they're going to receive a plaque from TCA that says TCA grant recipient or TCA grantee. They hang it in their barn, so whenever they have visitors, donors come in, they're going to see the plaques that are adorning the barn walls. Our grant recipient, or grantees rather, also receive a digital grantee logo that they can adorn on their website or on their marketing materials. And again, it's kind of that intangible, good housekeeping seal of approval that we think is really important, aside from the probably most obvious incentive, which would be the grant money.
I want to interject real quick. When you mentioned that seal of approval, it just jogged my memory. We actually, on the UHC site, we have a list of questions for owners to ask of these, if they're looking to surrender their horse to a rescue or a sanctuary, guidelines of questions for them to ask to make sure that where that horse is going to be safe and a responsible place for them. But to take the guesswork out of that for the owner, by having those seals of approval, they know where their horse is going. It's a tried and true facility, and it takes the guesswork out of that for the owner. So I'm glad you brought that up.
When I was considering this question, I listed 6 overall benefits that I think you can attribute to certification or accreditation. The first one, as Erin just talked about, is recognition, seal of approval. And Ashley, you added more to that. That's great. But this seal of approval or recognition gives groups a very simple way to communicate that they're capable and worthy of support by donors and foundations. But not only that, also law enforcement. A lot of these animals, a lot of equines are seized by law enforcement agencies, and they know that this is a worthy, capable rescue that they can send those animals to. Also, just even potential adopters of horses, if there is some kind of recognition, seal of approval, then they can be assured that this is a credible rescue. A number of our certified organizations are in fact certified by many of you guys. We work all together, and although we may be sounding a little bit repetitive, we each approach it in a different way, and we collaborate. We're collaborating quite a bit with the Equus Foundation right now, adding kind of our piece to it, and we're working together to try to reduce the paper load that some of our groups have to go through. The second benefit I want to say for GFAS is self-assessment. This gives organizations, when they go through our process, the opportunity for introspection. One of the key things that we do is that we mentor groups. We want them to achieve best practices. So we have like a number of samples and templates, and we are there to assist them going through the process. And it gives them the confidence too that they are meeting best practices. They're doing the best that they can do for their animals. And it gives some of the newer groups like an opportunity for coaching or mentoring in areas that they know they're not yet ready for, and we hope to do that. The third item that I listed was sustainability. We promote sustainability, and hopefully we're decreasing the likelihood that an organization, an equine rescue, will collapse. We provide them with tools and protections in place, like they must create succession plans and emergency plans and contingency plans with our help. Financial plans, and these are all things that will help prevent the collapse of an organization. The fourth item I put down was mitigate risk. Going through the accreditation process helps each organization identify their individual or specific risks, and then we help them obtain appropriate, say, insurance coverage, general liability coverage. We work with three insurance agencies that can give them a discount for liability insurance. We do, in our site visits, a very thorough fire safety analysis. We help them with emergency and disaster preparedness plans specific to their area, whether this is a group that is in California and is at risk for wildfires, or in an area of the United States that might be subject to flooding or hurricanes. I lived in Florida for a number of years. 20 years ago, I hate to say that, I set up a horse rescue myself 20 years ago, and it was during that time of Irene, Jean, Wilma, all those girls, yes, have to evacuate horses to like local fairgrounds, and just being prepared, of course, is critical. Being accredited increases capacity. Once again, if a lot of these rescues start out with people that are compassionate and they're committed and they might know how to care for horses, but they're stuck and have to learn to reinvent the wheel. And we hope that we can help them, again, prevent organization collapse, and so that these rescues and sanctuaries are successful. And the more that are successful, the more they're able to care for horses and help more animals. And the sixth thing, am I on time still? Raising the bar. Certified organizations that are invested in best practices. They teach others by example, by anyone who goes to their facility, be it an adopter, a donor, a volunteer. They are learning by example quality animal care and best practices in management and governance. GFAS certified organizations also get the opportunity to be mentors for other organizations, so they just really raise the bar in terms of animal care.
I like that you brought up the mentorship, because I think we see it too often where these rescues need rescuing, and having somebody to help them and keep an eye out for them and sort of guide them in the right direction is certainly critical to helping prevent that. I know you guys think you're sounding redundant, but you all had different points to make, so.
I just said we hit the ditto and Me Too part of the program, but no, but I think that's great that, to get a peek behind, like a GFAS accreditation. The comment was made earlier about a $25 or $4 million organization versus a $25,000 and how you judge them. Let me tell you, we're not a accreditation organization, but when it comes to grants, that sure does help level how you gauge the professionalism of how those organizations are run. We've seen a lot of multi-million-dollar rehoming and rescue organizations that are nothing but we've seen $25,000 budget, annual budget ones that are run super professionally. So when we go out and provide grants to Right Horse partners, knowing that they've taken the time to go through that accreditation of one of the groups up here, they've got their board in order, they've got their transparency locked down, they've got a succession plan, all of those things are in place. It gives us a higher degree of confidence when we're awarding some of that grant money. Specific for ASPCA as a Right Horse, partnerships and those actively interested in becoming a partner, we call them warm-up ringers. That's our mentorship program. The minute an organization, and really all they need to do is just sort of raise their hand and reach out to one of us at ASPCA, the Right Horse, to step into that warm-up ring, and we'll kind of guide them through those first initial steps. But once they're in the warm-up ring, once they're a full-fledged partner, obviously they have access to the grants. They have access to a list of different benefits that come from our industry partners. This would be free microchips, free vaccines. They have access to the entire marketing and publicity efforts of the ASPCA, which is massive, and just sort of elevating out there in the world what they're doing. I happen to think the most important thing, and it's kind of been mentioned here, that they receive is the ability to collaborate, the ability to partnership and team with other organizations like them out there to raise what it is that we're trying to do. And again, that's massively increase adoptions of these horses that are ending up in these facilities or prevent them from getting there altogether. So I thought it was great.
Wait, it's terrible to go last. I don't want to echo any of that, but the transparency, the third-party audit, it's also important. But I think a benefit that many don't realize, if you're on the fence about becoming accredited or making application, the quality of adopters is going to go up. That you're going to give confidence in adopters to look at your program. Donors, not just grant-making bodies, but private donors are looking at you harder. Horsemen's associations we are routinely seeing now that horsemen's associations only want to donate money to an accredited program. So going forward, that's likely going to remain the case. In our case, owners and trainers only want to donate a horse perhaps to an accredited program. So you're giving confidence to everybody that interacts with you, that you're operating according to best practices, you're a sustainable charity, and that helps our organizations at least partner with other entities and other advocates within our industry.
Excellent. Okay, you can keep the mic because then you're going to go again, and we're going to go left to right. So let's move. We're doing so good on time. I'm so proud. So the next question, this was actually in the survey that we did, ranked as our #1 question. What are some of the common reasons that organizations do not pass the qualification process? So how can they improve so that they do qualify? And what resources are out there in the industry or through your partnerships or accreditation to help them get there? So we'll start with you, Jen.
Okay. So I picked a couple of very easy ones. I know the same situation is going to happen here. You're all going to answer very well. And most of the resources that, because we don't really advertise a mentorship program, we do refer to UHC materials, the right horse, GFAS, right? So we do have a best practices policy, a statement. That is very helpful. And if you maybe feel like you possibly meet a lot of the criteria, but you're wondering if there would be a red flag, a final reason that you would not receive approval, I think the policy statement really itemizes out the reasons that programs are successful in accreditation, and through inference you can figure out why maybe your program would not be eligible for accreditation. But so I want to say that the most common reason that we see someone not become accredited is because they don't apply, and they don't even get in the pipeline to apply because they think there's no way, there's no chance, maybe something isn't in order, and maybe they get halfway through the application and they might need a little bit of assistance, and boards move slowly. So even if they do have a good board of directors, they might feel like they're a couple years out from, successfully becoming accredited. So lack of interest in that and pursuing that. And then the second would probably be some of our programs fail to adhere to AAEP euthanasia guidelines, which are really important. We all acknowledge now, I think, that horses do not need to live with chronic illness and pain, and there's not a lot of service out there right now to help horses that maybe just need the final humane transition, and it's a subject that we don't like to talk about, but it's very important that our accredited programs are adhering to good euthanasia guidelines.
And that's one of the things that Em and I are also working on, is making the conversation surrounding euthanasia, if it's necessary for an owner and they're looking for help, trying to make that conversation less taboo and make them more comfortable about coming to terms with it, letting them know what options are available so that they prepare ahead of time, because oftentimes it's such an emotional situation, and if they are aware of what's going to happen and what their options are, advance of that, it will really go a long way in helping them through that process. So I'm glad you brought that up, Jen.
And that sort of gives me an opportunity to plug something. I would just piggyback onto that if an owner needs assistance, they can reach out to the AAEP ASPCA's Vet Direct program. It is a fund of money that is available to veterinarians across the money. Sarah's in the back of the room, she can help with it. if an owner needs assistance with the cost of euthanasia and disposal, there is a resource out there for them to gain access to that. So I just wanted to get that plug in there. Thank you. But again, for partnership within ASPCA's The Right Horse, I mentioned groups just need to reach out to us first. That's the first step, is just take the initiative to reach out to us. They should be extremely focused on changing the perception around the adoption of horses. And that really kind of falls into 3 different categories. I think it's philosophical, it's ownership, and it's sourcing. Although on the Right Horse website, there's a list of like 13. They're called criteria, but they're really more just operating, the manner in which you operate your rehoming organization. But why they typically end up not making it through the warm-up ring would first be around the philosophical. We try to start our conversations around adoptions with yes. We don't want to make it hard for these people to adopt horses. We have to make it easier. All of the organizations that was mentioned earlier that are part of ASPCA's The Right Horse, they do provide those safety nets. So there's safety measures that are out there to help when adoptions don't go right. For instance, they can bring horses back. They can access other resources and things like that. So we want to start with a philosophy with partners and those interested in becoming full-fledged partners with, thank you for reaching out to us today and wanting to adopt from one of our organizations. Maybe that person isn't ready to adopt today, but get them, nurture them, help them find, as we say, their next right horse. The second would be around the aspect of ownership. Just like if you go out and you buy a horse and register it, that horse becomes yours. We believe the same thing should hold true with adoptions. When you go and adopt, that horse needs to be under the ownership of you, and you own it outright, not the rehoming organization from which you adopted it. And a lot of organizations, again, that don't make it through, don't share that same philosophy, and that's okay. They probably do a good job in other ways, but we do require that ownership at the time of or within a year, of adoption, transfer to the adoptive family. And then probably the biggest stopper for us would be sourcing. Obviously, owner surrenders are great, working with law enforcement, working with community animal welfare shelters and programs and things like that. A great way to source horses. We do let organizations source from auctions. Where the hard stop is for us are the groups that want to source primarily or only from these kill pen bailout programs. It's just a hard stop for us. They're bad for the industry. They're bad for all of these organizations trying to help these horses. So it is probably the one area where we do have a hard stop.
GFAS has eligibility criteria. You have to be eligible to apply in the first place. So some groups don't meet that criteria. And our eligibility criteria, number one, is you have to be a nonprofit or have non-commercial status. And in the U.S., of course, that's a 501c3 determination. You must endorse a no breeding policy both within your facility, of course, and your foster or adoption partners must endorse a no breeding policy. And Tom mentioned this just a second ago, but GFAS certifies organizations that acquire equines through donation or rescue and not purchase. We do accept that some rescues do purchase animals from low-end auctions as the only means of saving a particular animal, but GFAS will ask how that purchasing from auction meets your mission or is part of your objectives. If you're purchasing from auctions on a regular basis, then you just flip into what we would call commercial trade, and you're outside of our scope. And there are other issues around that, but that would be a whole nother conference. Animals equines residing at your facility must not be exploited in any way that causes them stress or poor welfare. What you do must be animal welfare positive. So if you have public tours or open houses, all that's great. We will just ask what your policy is to protect the welfare of the animals. So some petting zoos, etc., just may not be eligible to apply. But we're very open, and we just ask you to explain that. GFAS does not have a pass or fail system. All the groups that start the process and get through the process, they will end up with what we call a compliance plan or an action plan that is determined by our 8-member accreditation committee. These are recommendations that the group needs to address in terms of safety or risk management or animal care or governance best practices that don't quite meet our GFAS standards. Everything we do is about our standards. So they will get this plan, this action plan, and then it's my job as staff and our other staff is to work with the group to help them meet those items. We give groups about a year to try to address any issues, and if it takes longer than a year, again, they can submit a plan, and we will try to help them address the issues as soon as possible. By the time groups have reached that accreditation committee and have a compliance or action plan, it's really just a matter of time until they're certified. And if they decide to withdraw at that point, then we then have a record on them and the work that they've done, and so then it's easy for them to reapply again in the future. There are groups, of course, that drop out. They start the process and drop out, and I was trying to just get some quick statistics, but probably about 25% don't complete the process, and the most common reason are the standards that are related to financial issues. So a healthy charity, according to our standards, is that groups should have funds available at all times to offset times when donations fluctuate. So GFAS requires that they have a financial reserve, and that financial reserve or cash funds available should be equivalent to 1 month of operating expenses for verification, which is our kind of entry level of certification, and 3 months for full accreditation. So a lot of groups just aren't there. They're going month to month in terms of finances. We try to help them to develop strategies to put funding aside so they can meet that requirement. Also, we do require that all groups have general liability insurance, and that costs. That's a cost. So again, that's maybe a reason, it's a common reason, those 2 items for groups to drop out.
Thank you. Okay, for us, for TCA, there's a variety of reasons that a organization may not receive a grant. And some of them are, the first one might be that the organization doesn't work to uphold our mission. We're Thoroughbred Charities of America. If a quarter horse rescue applied to TCA, obviously that would not be working to uphold Thoroughbred Charities of America's mission. And we believe very, very strongly in being an extraordinary steward of the funds that are donated to us from our donors. We do not receive funding from any mandated sources, 100% charitable organization. So we have to keep our donors coming back year over year so we have money to grant. Therefore, we have to make sure any grants that we distribute are in line with our mission statement. So love quarter horses, but if an organization is focused on quarter horses, they're not going to meet our criteria for a grant. Secondly, some of the scenarios where an organization may not receive a grant, we actually have 3 different grant applications that are released each year. One is focused on aftercare, one is focused on the backstretch employees, and then one on thoroughbred incentive programs. I feel like it's quite clear on our website which is which, but there have been a couple occasions over the years where the wrong application was submitted. So that would obviously be a disqualification. Incomplete applications, missing documents, wrong documents, things like that. Those are always reasons for disqualification, although we do generally go back to the grant applicant and say, hey, you missed this document, would you like a chance to submit it? Because we do understand that, these organizations are quite busy. And I think it's important to note that TCA, we're a competitive grant application process. We have limited funds to distribute each year. I wish we had more to go around sometimes. So that said, we would expect applicants to really put their, like Kristin said, best foot forward in completing their grant applications each year because it is a competitive process. With that limited funding each year, thank goodness I don't have to make these decisions, but our grants committee does have to make some tough decisions about which organizations receive funding and which don't. There is a bit of a greater good sort of mentality sometimes. If there's an applicant that is only maybe 10% thoroughbreds versus an applicant that is 100% thoroughbreds, and we have limited funding to go around, we want to help those that we can the most. So, as far as the second part of this question, resources, I've been at TCA 13 years now, so quite some time. Call me. I feel like part of my job is to help these organizations become stronger and better and, build their organization out so they can receive funding from everyone up here. So I'm always happy to have a discussion with an organization. Over the years, I've helped some organizations develop. For example, an organization reached out to me several years ago asking for an adoption contract. They wanted an example of a good adoption contract, so I provided that to them. So I think that probably goes for any of us up here. We're happy to reach to talk to organizations at any time and give them some advice. I think that sometimes it can be a little scary, I know for me when I'm applying for grants on behalf of TCA, I'm thinking, should I call the executive director? Should I, I don't want to bother them. Call us. We're all happy to talk to you at any time.
Thank you. So there are kind of several times when during the accreditation process you could potentially be denied or not pass. So I'm going to start with our what we call minimum requirements. So to be TAA accredited, the organization does have to be a 501c3 or a Canadian charity. They have to have been in operation for at least 3 years, and we determine that by looking at the date of organization on the Secretary of State's website. So it has to have been established as a business for 3 years. At the time of application, the organization has to have a minimum number of thoroughbreds. There's sort of two options for that. They either have to exclusively own and care for 5 thoroughbreds at the time of application, or have at least 3 or 4 thoroughbreds at the time of application, but have cared for at least 10 over the previous 12 months. So that goes sort of to the small organizations that we're talking about that do a good job, maybe don't have a lot of horses at one time, but are adopting a lot of horses throughout the year. They have to have a written euthanasia policy consistent with the AEP, and then they cannot currently have any legal proceedings pending against them which adversely impact aftercare operations. So once you get past those 5 minimum requirements, they're kind of like the first 5 questions on the application. If you answer wrong to any of those, it won't even let you proceed. So once you get past that, then the next step is to fill out the application. And I will second what Erin said about the applications. This is the time for the organization to tell the TAA everything that they need to know about your organization. If there's a question that says, I think it's like describe your organizations in detail or something like that. Writing one sentence, we adopt thoroughbreds. Okay, what does that mean? What makes you special, different? How do you do it? What's your program like? So really just, if I could emphasize anything, it's have whoever's filling out the application really read the question and respond to the whole question in as much detail as you think that you can. Nothing is too much information. I would rather read more information than just no, well, you're a Thoroughbred adoption, great. Okay, I have 84 of those. I know that. That's why you're applying for TAA. So incomplete answers, missing information in documents, failure to meet deadlines, those are all probably going to be the, for lack of a better word, easiest way to not pass. And so those are all within the control of the organization, so do the best to remove that as the reason that you're not going to be approved. Within the application itself, just generally, failure to demonstrate operational stability or financial transparency is going to be the reason that for a denial at that stage. If an organization is moved to the inspection stage, once we get there and do the inspections, denials are mostly for reasons that facilities can't provide a safe environment for the horses, don't have qualified staff or volunteers to meet the needs of the horses in their care, or if the inspection does not reflect the information submitted with the application. So we ask for a lot of documents when we would do the application. That includes what's your hoof care protocol, deworming, vaccines. So if you say we do XYZ and we get to the inspection and the inspector notes that you do ABC, that's going to be a red flag. So what's the disconnect there? And we will work with groups to try and figure out what the disconnect is, but if you say you have protocols and you provide them, that should be what's happening at the inspection itself. So organizations that are denied are offered the opportunity to have a mentorship call with accreditation staff. At that time, we'll review all of the reasons for denial and then give the organization staff an opportunity to ask questions. And then once organizations are accredited, we also do what are called recommendations for improvement, which are provided after all of their application and inspections are done, as well as after their re-inspections are done on an annual basis. And they need to respond to us with either, yes, we fixed that, or here's our plan to fix those areas, or here's why we don't think that we need to, essentially. And failure to respond to those recommendations for improvement can actually result in grant checks being withheld until such time as we get a response. So it's an ongoing communication, even once the organizations are accredited, to ensure that there's always improvement happening. And we also then recognize their best practices. So if we have organizations that are doing really cool things, we bring those to their attention too, and then we also try to spread that information to other organizations that might benefit from it.
Thank you. This is the time when I guess I don't mind being last. Because after listening to everybody and the specifics of what they're doing, while we are exactly alike in many areas, we're totally different in other areas. And that's good for the industry. Because what may be good for one organization may not fit a different organization, and there's still a vehicle for them to get access to information, resources, and everything else. The paradox is, generally, we all have restricted amounts of money. We all have to make that separation, and unfortunately, I would say that in all of our cases, and I will say this at least for the Equus Foundation, that I can say that probably many of the institutions and organizations that receive the funds need them the least. And the reality is the ones that really need the resources that we have don't even start the application process. They don't even know how they could, or they're so buried deep in what they're doing on the day-to-day that they don't know how to change it. And I made the comment about the thing about the organization of business. I used to teach business. I have a business. Do you think I operate my business the same way I taught it? How many people do? They don't. And many of the rescues and many of the therapeutic riding centers are operating the same way. They're approaching it from the perspective of their love of trying to do what they're doing with the equines that they have, whether it's helping somebody in a therapeutic riding situation or whether it's helping somebody for saving the life of some equine. But that doesn't mean they translate to good business practices. And one of the things that we would find, and it's been echoed up here, the good business practices sink most of the institutes, sink most of the organizations. They don't have a conflict of interest policy for their board of directors, because there's 5 board of directors. It was founded by a husband and wife and their sister and the vet, and everybody else is on the board of directors, and they all have a conflict. Now, they don't want to admit that they have a business conflict, but it is a conflict. And so the difficulty when you make that transition between the 501c3, because that's also one of our requirements, you have to develop the transparency and you have to have some of those things. And that's tough for many of those organizations to follow, because they are doing the day-to-day too much. And so I would say that one of the biggest difficulties is the ability to take themselves out of that day-to-day and start talking about things you're talking about, philosophical stuff. How are you going to do best with this? How are you going to best with this and there? And there are ways to do that. But I would say one of the other things that would help a lot of people is figuring out other income streams, so that there would be a way to help. And that's why it's really great for organizations to help not only those that are successful, but help those that need to be successful and give them the tools in order to be able to do it. And we, like other organizations, have things. We have a conflict of interest policy on there. You just plug your name in and away you go. You just sign it every year in terms of doing that. And that's just one very little aspect of it in terms of there. But I think that the reality is that we also try and keep the paperwork down. While it is involve a lot of paperwork and a lot of answers to questions, we try and use different tools to help us. We use GFAS all the time. We will accept vet assessments from TSA or TAA, so they don't have to go through a whole nother vet check in terms of being able to do those kinds of things. Those collaborative efforts help those organizations do that in order to make it work. But it's not necessarily bad that everybody has different standards or different ideas of what is going to do, because they do. They have to. The number one thing is to deal with your donors and to make sure that the money that you give out is doing what it needs to do. And so it's healthy for the industry to have that, and the more that people know about that, I think it's best for everybody to continue to work together, but also to highlight our differences and be okay with that.
Excellent. So we are doing fantastic on time, and I just want to, because we are recording this, let our rescues know exactly what we're going through with this panel. You don't know what you need to improve upon unless you ask. So as a lot of our panelists were mentioning, reach out to them. Get the process started. You won't know if you're going to be accepted or not. The best case scenario, you become accredited and you become partnered. Worst case scenario, you're going to get some mentorship. You're going to get some advice on how to improve your rescue or your sanctuary. So, certainly take advantage of this information. These people are here to help you. So, I think what we're going to do, because we're doing so well on time, if it's okay with our panelists, I might skip this question, and I wanted to actually throw a fun one in. You can answer it, you don't have to. If you don't want to, you can skip. But what is your favorite part about helping organizations become accredited or partnered with you? And I think, Tim, you...
So what's the question again?
It is. I wanted to do a fun one because I think we've sort of covered this in our questions. So what is your favorite part of helping organizations become partnered with you or accredited through your organization?
My favorite part is when you get the acknowledgments back after they get the guardianship, that they feel really excited that they did get it. And they're really happy that the work that they put into is actually going to be used in some fashion in order to be able to do it. And yes, they know they're now in the running for the grant, so that's a positive thing. But it is that they know that their work that they've done has been worthwhile, and because there is a lot of back and forth. So I know how much work they're doing in terms of being able to do that. And I think that's the success at the end is probably the happiness that I have.
I'm going to throw out two, but I'll be quick. I think my first one is going back to the mentorship. When we have a call with a group that maybe wasn't able to be accredited the first time, and then they come back the next year and they're like superstars, it's like, yes, they paid attention and actually kind of learned from the process. So that's awesome. Then for someone who sits at a desk all day long, getting to do the inspections of the organizations and see the horses in person and meet the people, and probably my favorite ones are to do the therapeutic riding facilities, but all of them are great. But just being able to actually immerse yourself in what we're doing reminds us why we're up here and why we're doing it. It's kind of hard sometimes to abstractly look at applications and photos of horses. Getting to see them, I think everyone should be able to do an inspection. And sidebar, we need inspectors. For anyone who is interested, we do use volunteer inspectors. So see me afterwards if you'd like to be an inspector.
It's a good question. Definitely everything that has been said already, no doubt. But I think, two things for me as well. Just being able to see some of these organizations grow and succeed over the years. Again, I've been with TCA quite some time, and to see that change in them is really rewarding, I think. Especially the ones, like there's been over the years a few organizations that have really, kind of reached out and said, hey, I have this idea to start an organization, an aftercare organization, and then to see them actually build and become a TCA grant recipient and then become accredited, or, whatever the process is. It's great to see that happening. But hands down, my favorite time of the year, it's not Christmas, it's not my birthday, when we distribute our grant checks in early September. We usually have around 80 grantees a year, and many of them will call me and say, hey, just got your grant check. You know what, now I can have that chip removed from the Thoroughbred I just got off the track, and we're going to do it, and he's going to go on and have a great career. It's that sort of direct connection, because sometimes, like Kristin said, you get a little far removed from it when you're reading a grant application or looking at a website, but when you see what your funds are doing on a more tangible level, it's rewarding. It's my favorite. Yep.
Ditto. I love my job. I have been with GFAS since 2011. So for many years, I've seen groups over the years develop and mature and evolve and bring in horses in terrible shape and see those horses be placed in wonderful homes is extremely rewarding. We collect, like everybody, lots and lots of information and policies and protocols, but I do most of our site visits. We have a staff that do site visits around the world and in the country, but probably I do most of the horse site visits myself. So it really personalizes all those policies and protocols and applications. And then when the group is finally certified, I really feel like they're family. And I just have a wonderful job. I get to meet wonderful people and wonderful animals.
I was just sitting here thinking, I wonder how Christy Schulte-Kappert, who's the program manager for the Right Horse, and Emily would answer this question versus how I would answer this question. So I may go back and I'm going to ask the question of them just to see. A couple of things. I think one, watching I'm going to use the word small, that's not necessarily the right word, but a smaller warm-up ringer becoming a full-fledged partner with the Right Horse. That's always cool to see. And they take a sense of pride in taking that step, out of the warm-up ring and into the big show pen, with the Right Horse. So that's always cool to see. But beyond that, I think it's this collaboration, the spirit of working together for a common purpose, where you don't just have one organization, but you can literally see all of these rehoming groups who have this philosophical shift, putting their shoulder into this effort to make a difference out there for these equines in transition. That's really cool to see. And just the energy overall that they bring to the movement, to the effort, is amazing. We had 5 or 6 partners that we brought to Equine Affair in Ohio and did an adoption affair in Ohio. And I think 7 horses ended up being adopted directly out of the adoption affair. which was cool to see. But what was really neat was to see those groups that were there work together, welcome people down our shed row, introduce their horses to these potential adopters, and just getting to see that firsthand, and how they're all working together for this common purpose is really cool. So, and we will do the same thing at Springfield, by the way.
So our organization is relatively new. We're in our third year of accreditation. So for us, our programs have been operating for a very long time. And when we did the inaugural accreditation, it was just like it infused energy into people who have been toiling for decades. It's such a labor of love, and you are able to finally applaud them and give them formal recognition for the work that they're doing. And now in our third year, we're still seeing that. The smaller organizations are coming along now, and we just get a chance to clap, and we feel like we're all part of the same family, where we have a shared interest, and to give them the support that they probably wish that they've had all along, and finally being able to do that has been very rewarding.
Doing good work. So that is going to wrap up our panelist questions. So what we'll do is we'll move into any Q&A that our audience might have. But first, I just wanted to thank you guys personally for being here today. When I initially thought about pulling this together, I was thinking, maybe I'll get 3 groups will come and we'll have plenty of time to go over questions. And when all 6 of you responded, I was like, I would have to go back and rethink these questions. So you guys did an excellent job. We have a lot of great feedback, and I very much appreciate that we can bring this information back to the rescues and sanctuaries. And hopefully you guys will get a few bites, and maybe people will reach out to you, and we'll see where that goes. So it'll be nice if you do get some bites, please let me know. I want to see how this panel does out there. So
I have an announcement while everyone thinks of a question. The Equine Welfare Committee meeting at 1 p.m. has been moved to the governor's room next door.
Do they need more room?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, I will open up the floor to anybody who might have questions for our panelists.
You want to bring your mic around?
Yeah. I might trip, but I'll try. Anybody? Oh, you need the mic. Do you want to handle the back? I'll handle the front with the mics. Oh, oh, you guys need the mic, so I'm going to have to bring it around.
How about we make the memo?
That works. Yeah, we'll have you come up. That works. Very good.
I'll stand this way. So I'm Nancy Pascal with the Horses and Humans Research Foundation, and I'm wondering, is there any interest in conducting research on the horses that are being adopted or coming through Sanctuary, and then working in the equine assisted services industry? Is that something that, if you all would be interested? We are also interested in funding or finding research funds to examine not only the impact of horses on people, but the impact of people on horses.
Do you have a card?
I do. Okay. Mine says
I think the collective short answer is yes. So we'll find a way to connect.
Hi, Julia Wilson, wearing many welfare hats. My question hopefully is one that's easily answered. On the United Horse Coalition, is there an easy entry point for others that are first likely to become aware of horses that are not being properly cared for and need to be adopted? I'm thinking farriers, I'm thinking animal extension people where there are no veterinarians, that sort of thing. Right, you're doing a great job educating. Very grateful for that. So Equine Affair, for example, but are you doing presentations for the farriers? Are you reaching out to the law enforcement people who are usually clueless about horses?
Is this in particular like a see something, say something? Like,
or where to go to get those resources? I mean, you've developed this great list of rescues and organizations, but how do the other folks know?
Yes. So we actually last month we gave that presentation to the board of the National Animal Control Association.
Example.
So yes, yeah. So that is in our our long-term plan. We would love to really get that information out to everybody because we're all connected.
I don't have the mic to get on the camera, but if anybody's interested, we are starting to collaborate with NACA, which is the North American Animal Control Association. I never know if I get it.
National Animal Control Association. You got it. You're close. It's close.
But they are interested and we're educating them about how to connect with rescues. They also, and I think we had talked to, who were we talking about? Seminars they give to animal control officers on identifying welfare issues with horses and how to navigate and connect with rescues. So that's something that's needed and on our radar.
Last year we gave a talk to an extension group. Forgive me, I cannot remember who it was. But these are definitely things that are on our radar, and we obviously part of that is expanding into talks for farriers, like you mentioned. So yes, that short answer, yes, that is on our radar.
Sorry, it was long. Got a question back here. Oh, I was just going to comment. I know my voice can't.
I can.
It's fine. So I'm Cynthia Creamer with Florida Phoenix Equine Rescue, and I was just going to comment to that inadvertently through funding, Safe and the Right Horse in the ASPCA previously, I think there also is funding that trickles out to organizations that do that. So we train all the state of West Virginia's law enforcement. And in the past, it has sometimes been funded by the ASPCA. So I think that's something, as grant makers, they may not be creating it, then they could be funding organizations that are in
that do it.
Educating, law enforcement officers who are desperately in need of that information. And so,
right, and to add to that, in the equine resource database, too, that we've identified organizations that do offer things like large animal rescue training and things like that. And a lot of what they do when they do that sort of training is to talk about the See Something, Say Something campaign, where they can reach out to if they see a horse that's at risk. So they do exist, but yes, collectively it would be nice if we can find a spot for people to come to and get that information.
I'm Eric.
You got a big voice.
Fair to say, very thoroughbred centric. I was on the board for TCA for many years. On the board for the Secretariat Center, equine advisor for Square Peg in California. My question really, I think, is for Tim and Daryl. What is the benefit of a thoroughbred centric organization having what I would consider at this point a dual accreditation with one of the other organizations? I'm just trying to get to the point of what would be the benefit for, say, a Secretariat Center to become accredited through EQUIS or GFAS.
There are a number of donors and foundations. Although GFAS is it's a voluntary program, a voluntary accreditation program, there are a number of donors and foundations that do require GFAS accreditation, or at least they include it in their application because they know how thorough our assessment process is. And it includes not only an application, but we interview sometimes board members and the barn manager and volunteers, as well as doing a detailed site visit. And then the determination of your accreditation status is done by a group of peers, people that represent probably all the major animal welfare organizations. So it's a pretty thorough process. So it's like a double seal of approval, I think. But no bias.
Yeah. I like seeing all those logos on the UHC member site. Like 4 or 5. Looks really good.
Thank you. Well, I think the other, and this kind of goes back to what I said earlier about certain organizations actually really needing the money versus other organizations that don't, because our grants are not very large, I mean, in the big context of things. But I think it does help other organizations see the power of those more well-established ones with those accreditations and with those deals, because it gives them something to aspire to. So you then end up whether it may impact your organization a lot, it may impact other organizations a lot to have you have the accreditation because of that. Because it's to us, and I think that's collectively how I'm looking at it, this is an industry problem. It's an industry situation. And it's kind of like that rising tide saves or raises all boats. The issue of it is if we can help each other do the things we need to do, it makes us all better, whether it's the thoroughbred side or the standardbred side or the quarter horse side or the therapeutic riding side, because that's one of the things that's very, very important in terms of there, because they all do, and like Daryl was saying with their policies in terms of how they're doing it, they have different criteria of where you can acquire your equines that limits who can be in certain things. And that's good and that's fine. So, but I think it's collectively positive for an organization to have more than one stamp of approval, because we're not all looking at the same things either. And so you can be evaluated on different criteria and different conditions in order to do it, but I think it also helps the industry in terms of that. So.
Anybody else? Excellent. Well, thank you all for being here today. If you have any questions UHC related or EWDC related, feel free to pull MRI aside. We're happy to answer any questions or chit chat.
There's a pile of like free materials if you guys want it out by the registration desk, so feel free to look through everything. There's t-shirts, you know,
and sign up for the raffle.
you.